Hello, my name is Eileen. I am a hypnotherapist, a psychotherapist, and I am so excited to share conversations with Pearl today.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl again with Women's Successful Living, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Pearl. And you guys know I love to bring amazing women to you, and today is no exception. Today our guest is Eileen, and she is a Los Angeles native with 25 years experience as an entrepreneur, a therapist, a clinical hypnotherapist, and speaker. As a skilled licensed professional counselor and clinical hypnotherapy practitioner, she's also an expert in accessing the subconscious for ultimate health, wealth, and happiness. And who doesn't need that in their life? So welcome to the show today.
Thank you.
So excited to have you. So Eileen, talk to us about what led you on this path. You know, when we're little girls, we have these dreams of what we want to do, what we want to be when we grow up. What led you to the path of what you're doing today?
Well, I've always been interested in why people do things that they do my entire life. I've also been an empath and had a heart for the underdog, always helping the kids on the playground, moving forward. I started with an MBA and it just was not something that was really fulfilling me. And then on a whim, the month that I paid off my student loan for the MBA, I re-upped and at the same school for a master's in licensed professional counseling.
Wow.
And I've never looked back. It's just so interesting to me how we make decisions that make absolutely no sense. And we know that they're going to be destructive, but we do it anyway.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I love that. Like, you're right. We make destructive decisions and we don't think about it until after the destruction has happened, right? And we're like, why did I do that? What was I thinking? And, I always like to say to my clients when I work with them, listen, life's not a remote. We can't rewind it, but we can learn from it, right? We can decide what's the lesson I want to take from it so that I can move forward and maybe hopefully not do that mistake again or that destructive behavior. I love that.
Right.
And how cool, like you go through this, all this training in this class and you graduate, and then you're like, I want to do more. And so it's so powerful. So talk to us about empath. So, oftentimes we hear people say, I'm an empath. Help our listeners who for the first time are hearing what an empath, maybe help them. I mean, I have a good understanding, but maybe help our listeners who for the first time are hearing that, what does it mean to be an empath?
Well, I think that that you're an empath when you can feel what other people are feeling. So if you're having a conversation, you might actually project what it is that they're feeling. And so if they're very sad about something, you feel like you want to cry too. You get into almost like a bubble with them and fully and completely understand exactly what it is that they're going through, even though you've never experienced that particular experience before. So that's kind of an indication of whether or not you're an empath. And then empaths are also they favor the underdog. They always want to help people. They're, light workers. They're here for a reason. They want to help others and build the vibrational, level of the planet in general. So everybody that they come across, they want to help. Also, that you're an empath when people come to you for advice. If they spill their guts and you don't even know them, you're an empath.
So sometimes people might think you're kind of a people pleaser in some ways too.
Yes. Oh, definitely a people pleaser. Yeah. That's the downside of being an empath.
Yeah.
Too forgiving, way too forgiving too many times.
Yeah. And it's interesting you talk about that. So last year we lost our son, Matthew, at 25 in a tragic car accident. And I remember like even so before that accident, I remember there would be times I would have these dreams with like these visions of something happening. And then I was like, I just kind of brush it off. And then all of a sudden, like that thing happened, right? I was like, oh, what was that? And so last year, when my son passed, we had talked to him probably about, we figured time-wise, we figured it's like either as little as 5 minutes to as much as 20 minutes before he passed. Mm-hmm. And so normally we have like a sectional couch and my husband has a recliner. So normally my husband sits in a recliner and I sit in the first part of the sectional next closest to him. And this night my son had butt dialed us. And so I was like, we called him back and he swore up and down he was in an Uber, which we found out later he was really in my car. And so for whatever reason, I had this overwhelming feeling to get up from the spot I was sitting in. And I went to the opposite end of the couch. I never sit at that seat, right? And I was sitting there and I kept telling my husband, we got to figure out where he's at. We got to find him. He's like, Pearl, he was going to his girlfriend's house. We don't even know exactly where she lives, right? I'm like, I don't know, something's not right. And all of a sudden I was sitting there and I just started shaking really like, I mean, I don't even know what it was. It was like an out of body shake, right? So I tell all my friends now, I'm like, if you have kids, you know. And so we figured out the timelines when I was having that happen. Like my husband looked at me and said, you got to calm down or you're going to have a heart attack. And I remember saying to him, this is not health. This is something's wrong. Right. And so unfortunately, we didn't know for another 9 hours that he passed. Unfortunately, we found there's a whole other story. I'll show that on another podcast. But I remember like I had that overwhelming feeling that happened. And then a few months later, I'd gone to New York and I came back home and I was sitting on that same couch, but this time I was taking a nap. I'd been traveling. And I got this overwhelming feeling that my son was sitting on this blue chair that he always sat in when he had conversations with us. And I woke up to that overwhelming feeling, almost like that night that he passed. And I was like, all I could get from that feeling was the name Nick. And he had 2 friends named Nick. And I was like, I don't know who you're coming to tell me for, but and so I shared that story. And then I had a couple other instances that happened about some friends of mine who I had these dreams they got sick, and one did get sick. And so we sat down with this amazing empath from California. I need to connect you guys. His name is Seth. Oh. And he, I was telling him about some of this and he goes, do you ever tune into what you have there? I'm like, I don't know that I want to tune into it. But the part about, like we were saying, I share all that because the part about that is I do find myself, I call myself an old people pleaser. I used to be like, let me help you. I feel this, this whole thing. Right. And so I had to set boundaries around that, and everything. And so when you work with your clients, like, how do you help them recognize that destructive behavior that we talked about? And what are some of the steps for the discovery? Because sometimes we don't see that we just see, oh, it's a trait. Sometimes people say, well, it's just who I am, right? But if we don't address who you think you are and change some of those behaviors, you can't really become who you are meant to be, right? So how do you help them do that? Where does that come into play when they work with you?
Yeah. So the response, it's just who I am, really is an excuse to not grow, right? It's that I don't want to move forward in this. I'm comfortable where I am, which makes a lot of sense because the subconscious, which is 95% of our thoughts, and our conscious mind is only 5% of our thoughts. So if you think about that, we're little tiny riders on a big, big bull that's in control. The subconscious, the role of the subconscious is to keep us safe and alive. So it hates what's unfamiliar. It loves what's familiar, hates what's unfamiliar, right? So it's going to go toward all the things that are familiar because that's safe. And so the reaction of, well, it's just who I am, is just a subconscious saying, we're not going to change. So we can always grow. We can always change. We always develop. There's so much growth. We never stop growing. So understanding who you are, what I would do is obviously go into the subconscious. So I was a psychotherapist for over a decade, and I had people coming in and out of my office for years, 3, 4, 5 years. And we're developing these relationships and they're becoming codependent on me. And I'm thinking, this is not the point. I'm supposed to heal and you're supposed to go and fly away, in this new you. And so I started looking at other modalities. I used many of them, all the common ones. And hypnotherapy, once I moved back to California, was something that just smacked me in the face. It's tough because the modality is very woo-woo as people think, but it's really not. It's very scientific. It uses neuroplasticity. And so what I came to find was that if you could speak to the subconscious directly, which is making all of the decisions during the day, 35,000 decisions a day on average is what we make. Well, if you're consciously making those decisions, you're exhausted by the end of the day. There's no way that we can do that. So the subconscious is doing all these things to keep us safe, to keep us healthy, to keep everything that is familiar. And so we go in just by a very light, it's like a meditative state, really, more than, it's not stage hypnosis. You're not out cold. We're talking back and forth all the time. And we talk directly to the subconscious and ask the subconscious why it is that they're making the decisions that they're making, or they're doing things that they're doing. So it can be something as simple as, why am I binge eating, which is a big part of my community for women. But then also, why is it that I'm doing this tick all of a sudden? Or why is it that I can't stop smoking? Or why is it that I have outbursts in particular situations that are triggering? Well, it's just because the subconscious is protecting you in some way. So that's the very first thing that we do. We ask the subconscious what it is that's happening. But what we do is we go back into childhood, and we don't relive. There's no re-traumatizing. There's no living. We go back as the adult version of ourselves to look from an adult perspective into the childhood. What are the situations that happened that created the actions that you're doing? So then we go through 3, 4, 5 scenes, and then I help them discover the connection between these scenes. Then we identify what the role, purpose, function, and intention is of the subconscious. And then it becomes very clear what the connection is between your actions today and what happened when you were a kid. So if you think about the subconscious too, another way, I'm scratching my head because I had my roots done and they left it in too long and I got a rash, like, oh, it was terrible. Anyway, so I don't have lice, I have a rash. And so what's interesting is the connection between all of these things, right? So then what we do is we tell the subconscious, okay, these actions that are going on worked before when I was a kid, but now it's destructive as an adult. And I would like to act as the adult version of myself. And these are the changes that I want to make. So if you think of the subconscious, it has no cognitive reasoning like a small child. So I watched a YouTube or a reel the other day. It was perfect. Dad was flipping burgers on the grill. 5-year-old was behind him playing. And he said, "Hey, son, will you grab my buns?" Well, he meant obviously the hamburger buns, but the 5-year-old turns right around and grabs his tush. So cute. And that's the subconscious. It doesn't have the cognitive reasoning as an adult. So it's just going to do the same thing that's been working all this time until you tell it, hang on, thank you, but it's not working for me anymore. So I want to release this part and let it out into the atmosphere, like God have it, the universe, whatever the belief system is. And we're going to create a new part. And this is exactly what the new part is going to be. And in the hypnosis, we tell the subconscious, this is what we want. And it is like magic. I'm telling you, it's like a genie. Our subconscious is so powerful. It can heal us. It can change us. It can change anything that you want as long as you're clear about what that direction is.
Okay, so if everybody's listening, I hope you took lots of notes on that because, we often talk about fear, right? That false evidence appearing real. And everything you said too is like, I can't tell you. So we have a small group right now that's growing. Our membership is growing. It's called the Shiro League. And we meet every Sunday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. It's not recorded. It's a safe space to have open conversations around, our challenges, our success, our self-care, where we're showing up, where we're not showing up in our life. And we try to do working on the inner child. And I'm telling you, I think we had to stop. Like they could not grasp that the fact that inner child is who's showing up today in some of their lives, their decisions. They had the hardest time. So we just said, you know what, this is too overwhelming for you guys. We're going to rest it for now. And what's interesting though, is that as we've rested it probably almost a year ago, to watch them, and we point it out to them when it comes up, they'll say, well, when I was a little girl, we're like, there's that inner child we try to get you to talk to, but you didn't want to talk to because you're scared to go back and, address some of that. And it's so true. Like, I've talked about it here too, my son who passed, he has, some of his friends still come and hang out with us and visit with us. And one of them has a little girl and he's in a situation, it's not a great custody situation. And she happened to be here and I watched her react to her mom calling. And it was just like this scared, like this little girl went from happy to like this freaked out, scared to death little girl. And she's only 5 years old. And I pulled him aside. I said, listen, you need to address this. Like right now, this has got to be addressed or you're setting her up that this little girl is going to carry with her entire life. You have this small window to give her the tools that she can use to address some of the stuff that's happening. Unfortunately, it's not, he's not had good luck with some of this, with that situation, but it just reminds, as you were sitting here, that I often talk about the front of our head has all these negative stuff we tell ourselves, all these things that sabotage us and judge us. I'm not worthy. I'm not pretty. I'm too thin. I'm too heavy, whatever those things are, all of that front. And when I work with my clients, I love to help them let's figure out, like, we have a 4-month master class. It's called our Shiro method. And it's a roadmap. But before we could turn the engine on, we have to check out all the battery, the fluids, everything. I'm like, let's check where you're showing up from your little girl in your life today, And it's interesting to watch them figure out what we have to shred in the front part of their brain and realize through their positive intelligence what they can do to address it. And I get them, we name it when it shows up. Like mine is Betsy. So when Betsy shows up and tells me some of these things, I'm like, yeah, no, you're not allowed here right now, because I know where I'm going is the right way to go. Right. And so I love that you shared that, because you're right. When we don't, have the adult come back to talk to that child, it's so powerful. Yeah. So
it really is. And it's easy, it's actually easy to release that inner child and let her free. And that's actually work that we do in hypnosis, because that's where we get stuck. We get stuck with the narrative of the inner child. And we continuously do things. It's a pattern. Everybody sees the pattern as they're an adult. And it's if you really take a look at it, and I'm actually very forward with my clients and say, doesn't that sound like a small kid? Like take a look really at that. So let's discover where that came from. But the fear generally is, I don't want to relive my trauma, so I'm not going back there. And that's also the beauty of hypnosis. There's no reliving trauma. Yes, sometimes there's crying, sometimes there's this and that, because you feel the feeling, but there's not, okay, well, let's really dig into that, which is how we're trained in college, is to dig into all the little facets. It's not necessary. Just get the broad perspective and then say, okay, listen, that's not working for me anymore. Just like you do with Betsy, right? Yeah.
Yep, her name is Betsy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah. I think it's so powerful. Like I said at the beginning, I was a huge people pleaser. 2015, I went through a 6-week identity and destiny course. At the end of 6 weeks, I still didn't know who the heck I was. And my friend that I met in this course was like, you still say your mom, you still say your wife, you only talk about this child, you don't talk about that child. I was like, oh, you're right. I still haven't figured this out. So literally 2015 was about going on that journey to start to figure out who I was. What did I want? Where was I showing up in my life and where was I not showing up in my life? And who did I have to set boundaries around? Some of them were huge boundaries that I had to set. And then I had to forgive my little girl. I had to forgive her to know that all those things that happen, all the requirements to be an adult when I was just a child were not, I didn't have to keep doing that. So I could be who I want to be and be vulnerable too. And, be open to that vulnerability. So as you watch your clients, take this journey with you, what do you think some of the biggest challenges that you see them struggle with when it comes to sort of going back, like you said, they're not, they're having some of the feeling, but going back and walking through addressing that child?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. So I think really the crux of it is that not really having an understanding of what the core of the issue is. We live in a very, very fast-paced environment, and we are learning to become more desensitized to self and being calm, and not desensitized. I guess what I'm trying to say is not really understanding the value of just disconnecting and coming back to self and having an understanding, like you said, of who we are, right? So we have mind, body, spirit. We have 3. Without the alignment of the 3, you're off into la land. You don't really know who you are, where you're going, what you're doing, what your passion is, what your purpose is. And so that disconnect and that wobbly feeling that everybody has every day, and think that if I work, that's going to get me where I want to go, is completely false, incorrect. And so we're working so hard and so fast, and we have all these things coming at us all the time that we can't possibly figure out what the problem is. So most of the time, it's shocking, really, when customers come in or clients come in and they're like, I have a relationship problem. And we start talking about the relationship problem. For instance, just a couple of days ago, I had a client come in. She said, I cheat on my man. I constantly cheat on my man. And come to find out after, an hour of talking, she's not cheating on her man. Her man's not even her man. They're not even in a relationship, but he's telling her that she's a cheater. So she believes that she's a cheater. Why? Because she hasn't stopped long enough to get everybody out of her bubble and focus on self. Who am I? What do I want? What am I doing? What is my purpose? What is my passion? What direction am I going? What is it that I need to fill my own cup up? So separating all the stuff that everybody has that's distracting them, that's where we start. And then moving to, who am I? What do I want? What does my little girl need? How do we blend the two together and become the adult that I'm supposed to be? All those things. Did I answer the question? I think I might have tangent.
No, you didn't. I mean, you're right. We got to separate ourselves, that self. And sometimes we do take on what people are telling us, what our beliefs are. And when, like you said, we have to, I really think like what you're saying, it's identifying who I am, and then how does everything else come into that life of mine? It's so true. When I did that course, like I said, back in 2015, once I sent my son to college and said, I literally stood behind his second half of his junior year, his senior year of football in high school with a camera. And I was just this all day long, go back and forth, up and down the field. I never didn't have the camera off in front of my face. Right. So when I'd go home, I'd watch the film like, oh, he did that. Because I was so filming, I was forgetting what he'd done. And it reminded me that that's really how I was in my life. I was watching it pass by, but I wasn't being active in it. And I wasn't expressing what I want and what I accepted for boundaries. And once I started doing that, it's like things opened up and things became clearer to me of who I was, who I wanted in my life, and who I didn't want in my life. And there were some hard decisions, but when I look back, there were some of the best decisions that I could have made for myself, because I would have had the growth that I've had since 2015. And I also don't know that I would have been able to handle the challenges I have had, including the loss of my son, had I not done that work.
Yes.
Had I not addressed that, as a little girl, because my dad did 2.5, almost 3 tours in Vietnam, I kind of was like a co-parent with my mom for my brothers and sisters, even though I was still a little girl. So I've always kind of had this role of, I've got to, be that parent instead of allowing my inner child to have a childhood life. And so once I started doing that, I started doing things like taking a staycation, lining up with myself and setting boundaries and realizing that I didn't have to do everything. I didn't have to say yes to everything. And I really could stop being that people pleaser.
Yeah. And it was so smart and intuitive of you to take the time to build yourself for growth, because the majority of people, if you look at the majority of women, let's say, because that's my target market, is you'll spend thousands of dollars on Botox and injections and diets and personal trainers and boob jobs and liposuction and all these things, right, to make the outer self look amazing. But the trouble is that your inner life is a complete friggin' mess. And if you would focus on the inner life and settle it and figure out all of these things and do the things that help you grow, self-care being one of the major one, right? What is self-care? Meditation. Come on. I mean, I don't even know anything about Buddha, but I can tell you this. Meditation is one of the most powerful things that people can do. And they say, oh yeah, I tried it once or twice. It didn't work for me. No. Everything takes some time, but we're not willing to take the time. We want the immediate. Give me a pill, give me an injection, give me all these things. But here's the thing, is that we can turn back time. Literally, we can turn back time, and we can approach trauma, because more is coming. We all have it, and it's all coming. More of it is coming. We can approach these things with grace and with flow and with dignity and respect. Look at you. It's a year later. You're doing podcasts. You have a smile on your face. That was losing your son. I can't think of anything that is more painful, because you did the work before the trauma happened. Most people do the work after the trauma happened and then wait for 5-10 years until their life is out of control. And then they come to me as the last resort, fix it now. Right. So it's like doing the work along the way. It's not about, trust me, I do Botox in my forehead. Look, it looks fantastic. I get it. But there's also a million other things that I'm doing in order to keep myself youthful. I'm 47 years old. I think I look fantastic for 47. And why is that? Because I am taking care of myself in every way, mind, body, spirit. It's not just, I need to diet. I need to do this. You got to take care of your mind. You got to take care of your soul. You got to figure out who you are. You got to figure out the things that fill your cup up and actually take action on the self-care routines. I have so many things, so many things. I have a list of self-care routines, things, including your diet, including intermittent fasting, including stopping the binge eating and figuring out why you're doing the binge eating, which most people don't realize are binge eaters. It's very, very common. Stress eating is another way to say it. Yeah. So anyway, it's congratulations to you for doing the work before the trauma actually happened. Usually it's the other way around. And I've got people who are about ready to give it all up and suicidal and, turning around from suicidal.
Right. That's yeah, I really, for me it was like I said, I did that in 2015. And I think if I had not done that, I would probably be one of those people coming in going, help, this is stuff has happened. And I realized too, my kids, that 2015, my son was going off to college. My younger one he was a junior in high school. And I realized, I'd done so much for them that I didn't do for myself. And so I started, and that was effective because I sort of, you could call me somewhat that helicopter mom, and so I had to release that. And although my younger one, it's kind of funny. My older one, when he was away at college, like I probably called him almost every day because I could see what his classes. He struggled in high school, and here he is in college, And I finally realized through, this whole process of finding myself, of going, I have to release that. Then when my younger one goes off to college, she's like, you're such a helicopter mom. I go, I barely call you at school. You ask your brother how often I call him. I'm like, I hardly ever check on you, But but yeah, it's like as I figured out who that was, the really cool thing was to be the example for them. Because I remember last year, before about 6 or 7 months before my son passed, he had been away. He was in rehab for alcoholism, and he had called me long distance, and I was struggling with a friend, some things that had happened, things that were said, and I was like, you know what, I've got to release her. And I literally severed that relationship because ethically it didn't line up with what I wanted for my circle. And I remember my son, when he came home after his rehab, he's like, Mom, how do you do that? Like, how do you stay positive? How do you, no matter what's thrown at you, I've severed ties with my dad because he turned racist toward my son. I've got boundaries over how I allow my mom to treat me, and, and then friends and such. And I just looked at him and I said, I have to always be first in what I'm doing. And if I don't take care of me and what I will accept, I can't put my cape on and then take care of you. And so I really believe, like, as when he passed, because like you said, I did do this work and I did have these tools, and I had them in my toolbox, and I knew how to address my saboteurs and my judges when they showed up. I've been able to get through, the past, 11 months. And, it doesn't mean that every day I wake up with a smile on my face. There's times I'm like, I'm crying like a baby, but oftentimes I'm smiling because in my mind and my carrying my torch forward with this is that he saw me live a certain way when he was here on earth. Why, when he's watching me from heaven, am I going to live differently? Then I'm an imposter syndrome. I'm like, I can't do that. And I have an amazing grief group that I go to once a month. And, there was a lady that was sitting there. It was my first meeting, and I think it was her first or second time. And she was crying, her emotions were coming up. And she's like, see, this is why I don't like to be here. And I looked over at her and I said, can I tell you, thank you for being here? Because for you, it's 15 years later, and you're reminding me that it's okay to have these feelings. It's okay to let these feelings out. And I said to her, I go, and if you're not letting these feelings out more often, you need to, because it's healing, right?
That's why she's there 15 years later.
Right.
Because it's not okay to cry.
Right.
You gotta let it out. Otherwise, those things are going to pile up and pile up and pile up and pile up. I did the same thing. I had to be tough woman when my husband passed away when I was 35 years old with a 9-month-old. And I did not take care of myself. I did not do all the things that I was telling my clients to do with self-care. I was balls out. And then I ended up in hospitalization for severe complex relational PTSD. So I had to hit the ground. So I get it. Yeah, absolutely. Doing the self-care, making sure that you're taking care of all the things that you need. There is nothing more important. Be selfish. If there's a message to say, it's be selfish.
Absolutely.
Think about yourself first.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think, and I'm so sorry to hear about your husband, and like such a, with a baby, and, there's so many things that we all have different stuff that happens in our lives, and divorce and loss and grief and all these things. And it's like, but like you said, if we don't take care of self first, we're not going to know how to handle those things that God's going to bring to us. It's going to come into our circle. And I always, like, when I work with my clients, and I mostly them are women as well, I tell them, we're not going to get more on our plate than we can handle, but it's how you choose to work the work. and not address it or address it, and I have clients today that she's still in the same place from like 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm like, listen, until you're ready to address this, we're going to keep having this conversation. So let me know when you're ready and we can work through it. Because right now, if you're happy with the lane you're in, then keep living the lane you're in. But I can tell you, the little girl in you that I've watched sit here in my office, she's not happy, And so to do that work, it's hard. As those that are listening, we're both not sitting here saying it's easy work. It can be some tough work. Like you said, I mean, we're going to have some tears. You might have some yelling, I've hit a couple boxing gloves before and things like that, So for sure.
Yeah, I go out to the beach with my clients and we throw rocks as hard as we can out into the water. You have to do all the physical, mental, emotional things that are going to release the toxins that are in your system, because energy is energy. It never dissipates. It only changes form. So our emotions are energy. And if you keep that negative energy inside your body, it's going to mutate into terrible things like autoimmune disease, diabetes, cancer. All these things will change form if you keep it in. So you got to get all these emotions out. Otherwise, you've got all the emotions. You keep sweeping it under the rug. No cry, sweep it under the rug. Don't get mad, sweep it under the rug. All of these emotions. Well, before you know it, you've got this mound and you're tripping over the mound every time you have to go the other direction. Well, that's not going to work. Get it out. Burp Pandora's box of emotions and let that shit go, let it fly. And then start to see, okay, now where am I? But if you're not doing that, you're going to be 15 years later in the same grief group saying, oh, I hate crying.
Yeah. That's so true. I love throwing rocks. You just made me think of something from my retreat. We do a retreat every September. And this year we're going to the Gulf Shores of Alabama. We have 25 amazing women. We're talking about dream relentlessly. And one of the exercises are releasing what's holding you back, what's holding your dream from coming to fruition. That's like, what kind of action can you take to release what's holding you back? So I love that. You just gave me a great visual idea for the retreat. So
it works very well. Like really think about the emotion, put it in the rock and throw it out to the ocean, because Mother Earth, Gaia, wants you to release that. She can take it and she'll do something with it. Right. It's okay. Release it and then take in the positive energy. But do you also find that, with your ladies, it's really about the story that we tell ourselves at the end of the day. It's the narrative that we're saying. So it's the words that we say create pictures in our mind. Those pictures in our mind is what creates what we do next. But when you change the narrative, the same narrative over and over again, any narrative, always flip it to a positive. Do this with my clients constantly.
Yes.
You just told me what you don't want, but what do you want?
Yeah,
because
I love that.
What you don't want. Yeah. When you're telling yourself what you don't want, your subconscious is listening.
Yes.
Your subconscious is going to make happen exactly what you say that you're saying, right?
I love that. I used to do that with my kids. We're like, I'm like, well, what do you want then? Like, I'd be like, there you go again, mom. There you go again, mom. I'm like, well, you're telling me what you don't want.
Stick with the positive, because your subconscious is going to make it happen. And then you're also going to draw in that same energy. So if you're saying negative stuff all the time, guess what happens? Your wheel pops, you get into a car accident, you're late for your appointment, you didn't get to do your nails because you were 10 minutes late and they pop somebody else in there. It's like all these negative things happen. But then when you change the narrative and just do it consistently, these crazy positive things starts to come into your universe, into your aura, into your vortex, whatever you want to call it. And then things start really happening. People start coming in that change your life in a positive way. So it's all starts about how you talk to yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. A friend of mine introduced me. I can't remember what her name is, but there's this lady, and I think it was on TikTok. She was talking about affirmations and how you do affirmations. We stand up there. One of the big things for me is so I never meditated before in my life. I met an amazing lady through social media during COVID. Sharon RG is her name. She's in Canada. And she does this whole month of learning how to meditate. So learning how to do it twice a day. She works with you every day, once a day for 30 days. But the other part of the day, you're doing it on your own and in complete silence. You're not listening to music. You're just in your own headspace. And she walks you through how to do that. So I did that with her, and it was so powerful. And so one of the things that, came out of that too was I need to do affirmations. But sometimes we stand in front of that mirror. We're like, yeah, I kind of believe that, right? It's like, I'm beautiful. Yeah, I sort of believe that. So my friend Karsta, she introduced me. I can't remember the lady's name, but she talks about how to flip how you do the affirmations. So instead of saying I am beautiful, ask yourself, what actions am I doing today to make myself feel more beautiful? Right. So like with abundance, what activities am I doing to bring abundance into my life? Right. So now you're asking your subconscious to bring those activities to you, instead of saying, oh, I'm abundantly wealthy. But okay.
Like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, right. In your head, you're going, I'm really not, but okay, world, I'm believing you. So hurry up, bring it here, right? Where if you can ask yourself, how am I becoming abundantly wealthy? Then you start sitting down at your desk or working with clients and you start asking yourself, okay, in what way can I help this person? Or in what action can I do to bring me some abundance into my life? You're yes. asking your subconscious to bring that forward. And yes. once I've started doing that, it's been so fun and powerful and, eye-opening in different scenarios as well.
Yeah. And it brings in more activities that make you more abundant. Again, it's the words that you say, create the pictures in your mind. So you say, how can I be more abundant? X, Y, Z. There's the picture. Then you go, oh, okay. Throughout the day, you start doing what it is that you say and picture.
Right. Yeah. So those that are listening, that's something to try, is instead of just saying you are this, ask yourself, how are you doing this? In what ways? Especially in self-care, I struggled for the longest time. Like I said, people pleasing, taking a bubble bath. I never had time for that. But now I can sit myself out in my front porch on my swing, and I ask myself, what am I doing today to do something for self, And so I'm making sure I find those activities. And I remember when I started doing that, my kids, I think my son was he was a senior in high school, and my younger one was a freshman. And I remember I said to them, I'm going to go in every night now at 8:00 and I'm going to go read. So unless somebody's dying, has to go to the emergency room, and dad can't take you, don't come bother me. And they're looking at me like, are you crazy? I'm like, I'm doing this, so leave me alone, So connecting. So let me ask you this, Eileen. So let's talk about self-care. What are some of the things, I know we've talked about meditation, but what are some of the things that you like to do for self-care and that you guide your clients through for self-care? Like somebody who's never done self-care before, and what's some of the first steps you think somebody should do to help with that?
Yeah. So eventually all of my clients practice meditation. The reason is our minds are going so fast that we don't have the capability of really slowing it down and thinking about really nothing. And thinking about nothing actually builds 4 different parts of your brain, and it shrinks the amygdala. So the amygdala is the part of the brain that releases cortisol. It's that fight or flight hormone that we're all suffering from. That's why we have so much inflammation, too much cortisol, because we're going all the time. And so the key there, if you don't want to think about the spiritual side of it, think about the scientific side of it, is you got to shrink the amygdala, because most of our amygdalas are too large, and activate the other parts of the brain so that you can be more creative, you can be more outward thinking, you can think about self more, all those other things, and slow those toxic hormones that are going through your system. Really, really important for longevity. So lots of reasons why we do that. And self-care depends on the person, right? So if they have a cat that really makes them feel comforted, then we talk about that, and we talk about how much time they're spending petting the cat and really connecting with the cat, or dog or son, or what is it that really blows their socks off in a way that not but like wow, that was really fulfilling for me. I feel so much better right now. We talk about those things first, because for some people it's taking a bath. For some people it's sitting on the porch and swinging. So what is it in your environment that really makes you feel soothed? Then we take those things and we look at the schedule. We literally put it in the schedule, in the calendar. They take the phone out and put it in the calendar. What time are we going to do this? When am I done with all the things that I need to do? And it makes sense. Because if you don't do that, then you're not going to take action toward it. It's just talk.
Those are great examples of how to start. I remember oftentimes my clients go, yeah, but I don't, if I don't spend time with my kids, I feel guilty. I'm like, okay, you can do self-care with your kids. And I share with them, I'm like, let me just tell you, I said, I used to go with my oldest one, him and I would go do mani-pedis all the time. And I said, could tell you, I said, I could sit there and I knew was I happy he was having sex in high school? No, but the reality was he was. So I would know all about what was happening in his world. And we'd have conversations around using protection and, all those great conversations. And sometimes the nail tech would be like looking at us like, what are they talking about? But it was, and then that would lead to, by me opening that up. And then my younger son, one, him and I would go, his thing was movies, right? So and then my oldest one, after we do our nails, would go for sushi. So that turned into, as they got older, my son, when he got out of college and he was home, he'd be like, do you want to go for sushi, mom? That was my trigger to go, he needs to talk. Right.
Yeah.
And then my younger one, it was, mom, you want to go see a movie? That's when I knew he wanted to talk. And so I tell my clients, I'm like, create those environments, because as they get older, it's kind of that signal to them to say, mom, dad, this is what, I want. And I had a friend that I learned a lot of that from in Virginia. I used to see him at a little cafe every once a week. He had 2 kids. One was just this little tiny baby. And I would see him there and I would ask him, so, what are you doing there? And I go, you just giving your wife a break? He's like, no. He goes, I started this with my oldest one, and we'll carry on until they go off to school, that he picks a day, one day every week. He says, listen, my baby can't talk right now, but I'm creating the environment to know this is our time together. This is your safe space. Tell me anything you need to tell me, as long as, and just we'll handle it no matter what it is, sex, drugs, whatever it is. This is your space to have that conversation. And so I was like, that was so powerful. So as I learned and watched that, that's how I started incorporating it. And for me, it became a form of self-care for myself too, because I was doing mani-pedi, but I was spending time with my kids. I would watch a silly movie with my younger one, but I was spending time with him, right? And so I tell my clients, I go, your kids are little, watch, I don't know what it's called now, but I'm like, watch Barney or whatever, the silly shows with them, because you're spending time with them, but you're spending time with self at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you talk about the cats and the animals, and that there's all kinds of creative ways that you can do self-care. So I just love that. So I know we don't have much time left here, but so I want to know, what's some of the favorite things you like to do for self-care?
So my entire morning schedule is for me. It's quiet. Everybody's asleep. I don't have to tend to anyone as mom. So I usually get up between 5 and 6, depending on what's going on and what my schedule looks like throughout the day. Even before I sit up, I'll do a 15-minute meditation, nothing long. And I'm always asking, what can I do, to better the community? What is it that I do that I can serve? Because really giving for me is a part of self-care. I really enjoy giving, and I know that I'm doing what I said that I was going to do when I came here. And so then after I do that, I get up, I look at myself in the mirror, I tell myself I'm a badass bitch, or whatever it is that I want to tell myself that day. Because you have to remind yourself, nobody else is going to do it for you. You've got to tell yourself exactly who it is that you want to be. Remind yourself of that all the time. And then generally I'll do 15, 20 minutes of reading of something. Sometimes it's just a book that has nothing to do with growth, because sometimes I'm done with, trying to make myself better. Sometimes I just want to chill and read, some kind of a mystery, which I love. And then most of the time I'm doing something, my passion, I'm reading something about my passion. I have a whole medical line of medical books that are used in colleges. And I love just researching one little thing. If I have a client that has, something going on and I really don't know how to answer that because it's a nervous system issue, I'll look that up, and that's fun to me. I'm kind of a nerd. And then after that, take a shower, get ready for the day. Midday, around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, do another little meditation. I have to chill myself out. I get very, everything's going so fast. I got to help everybody else. I have to look in and see what's going on with myself. Then in the evening, I do all the things for the family, put everybody to bed. And then oftentimes I love listening to YouTube videos on whatever it is that's striking me that day. I love universe talk. I love spiritual talk. So I'll listen to Abraham Hicks and about something that maybe is that I'm confused about. What direction do I need to go? I have my dog. I pet my dog and talk to my dog and give him attention because he's a little Frenchie. And when they pick their mate, they're so attached. It's traumatic. Every time I leave, he looks for my slipper and will not let anybody have it. I'll do that. And walking is really one of the most powerful things that I do. I live 2 blocks from the beach. So I'll go out to the beach and it's got to be in feet, taking up the energy from the earth. And expressing gratitude's huge part of staying positive. And then I will, if I'm really, I can't tell you how many times I've been out there. I listen to music that matches my mood. And I can't tell you how many times I've been out there crying my tush off, or laughing because I'm just so happy, or singing out loud to songs that really motivate me, not caring a lick about what anybody else thinks. As a matter of fact, when I'm singing out loud, I have both in. I can't hear what I sound like, but to me, I sound amazing. And when I'm going past people, they're smiling. It makes them smile too. So it's a good thing. Who cares what I sound like? I'm doing positive things. That release is some of the best self-care that I do.
Those are all great examples. And I hope those that are listening, you take one or two of those little nuggets and just apply them somewhere in your life. And I'm glad you remind us too, like in the middle of your day, taking time, that breath work, like just take some time to breathe. Cause I remember for the longest time during my day, I would go, it was like, I would be so much like not breathing before I learned to do meditation that I would be like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So important.
That's another great one. It actually, if people don't understand, it hits the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the largest, most central nerve that we have, and it hits everything. You can actually do this. There's pieces of the vagus nerve, that are right here at the ear. If you massage your ear this way, it's very relaxing. It will help soothe all of the organs. But the vagus nerve is attached to your esophageal, everything here, from here all the way down, liver, heart, small intestine, large intestine, all of them. So if you're like this with cortisol all the time and you're not doing the breath work to slow down, the vagus nerve will actually trigger those fight or flight hormones to chill too. Super important. What you have to do is 4 breaths. 4, hold up, wait 3 seconds, breathe down, wait 3 seconds. Do that 4 times and your entire world changes.
It's amazing. Well, you guys heard it here. You've got some great tips from today for self-care, for balancing, and also talking to your inner child today. It's been so much fun. So Eileen, we only have a few minutes left. So tell everybody, and we'll put everything in the show notes. So if you're driving and can't write this down, don't worry about it. When you listen to us, it'll all be in the show notes. But tell everybody how they can reach you. What's the best way to reach you? And if you have anything you want to give away, feel free to share that too.
Yeah. Hypnolife365.com is my website. Hypnolife is my YouTube channel. Tons of information on there about the body and how to take care of yourself. It's endless. And my email address is on the website and YouTube. Eileen McDowell is my Facebook page. Hypnolife is our Facebook group. And then we have 2 other groups, a private Hypnolife group and HypnoSlim group. So those are the best ways to get a hold of me. I have free meditations on my website. The best one probably is a confidence meditation. It just it starts the ball rolling. You can see what hypnotherapy is like because it's a hypnosis in the meditation. So I always send people there if they're scared, thinking that hypnosis is like stage hypnosis. It's not at all. So those are the best ways to reach me.
Awesome. So I'll make sure everybody can get those and get to you for sure. And I love that. I love everything you're doing. I think it's so powerful. We really need more of what you do in our lives. So I hope that everybody reaches out to you. And if you're listening to us, make sure you like us on YouTube at conversationswithpearl.com. And then also, if you are wanting to learn more about our Shiro League, I would encourage you to email hello@wsliving.com. That's hello@wsliving.com, and just put the word Shiro. We'll make sure you get the link. But we've already forewarned Eileen that we're going to do our Better Questions, Better Life cards. And so I'm going to shuffle them. You're going to tell me when to stop. And we're going to answer the question. So here we go.
Stop.
All right. So how do you deal with adversity? I think we kind of know, but how do you deal with adversity, Eileen?
Well, I check in to see why I'm triggered. If I'm triggered, then it's something about me. It's not about them. So I look at the experiences that I've had. Why is it that I'm triggered by whatever's going on? And then what experiences that I had in the past that are creating these negative thoughts? Because adversity really, it doesn't have anything to do with anybody else but yourself. It's the way that you're reacting. It's the story that you're telling yourself about what's going on.
Right.
So, figure out what is it that's triggering you, and then go back to your childhood and see what experiences that you had that's creating the thought pattern that you're having right now based on the adversity that's going on.
I think you just gave us the best close we could have ever had for the day. That's awesome. I think you guys all have great advice here today. I know you should have taken lots and lots of notes. I know I have lots of notes here as well. So I want to thank you, Eileen, for joining us today. And I want to
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I want to remind everybody, you come into this world, you will have this oyster. You're a little rough on the outside, but as you do the work, as we've talked today, inside you'll find your inner pearl. And I hope you go out today and I hope you find your inner pearl of greatness. Have an amazing rest of your day. Hey, everybody. Welcome. I just wanted to come on and check in with you, see how you're doing, and just make sure that you truly are looking and finding your inner pearl of greatness. And so today's just going to be about some lessons for you around how you become your Shiro self. Like, really, how do you find that time for you that you can put yourself first without any guilt? And so I want to talk to you about that because, oftentimes we as women, we take care of everything else before we put something for ourselves on the time, on our planner. And so I want to talk to you about that. Why? Like, when was the last time you really challenged yourself to step away? Because you are a Shiro, you are powerful, and you are amazing. And sometimes we feel so overwhelmed that we don't feel that way, right? That we feel like, we're not working in our purpose of our power and our passion. And, we're not getting ourselves that time to pause and reflect and really create and develop our roadmap for our expectations, for our journey that we want for ourselves. So I want to ask you this. I want you to consider this. I want you to think about, is there been a time when you wanted to take time for yourself and you just said, I'll put it on my calendar. And then when it came time for your calendar, you said, oh, I can't do it. I got to get the kids to practice. I've got to go to this event. My husband needs help with this thing at work, or I'm tied to my job and we've got this deadline to meet. I want you to really think that, there is a woman who is a hero for everybody else freely. Like, we pour into others so much, so freely, that truly our identity and our focus becomes that for the other person. And we're putting our focus and our identity on a shelf, right? We freely accept it, that despite how we might feel in the moment, that it's okay to put ourselves on the shelf. So I want to give you some thoughts and some steps about really, showing up for yourself and saying yes to yourself and not trying to please others, right? Because so often we are that person. We become that people pleaser. We say yes to everybody else so excitedly now, but you don't say yes to yourself as excitedly. Like, you feel guilty, right? Do you ever feel guilty when you say no to somebody because you're like, oh, they're not going to like me. They're going to think that I don't care for them. They're going to think that I'm selfish, all those things, right? And, because we show up for others so much and not for ourselves often, it can feel like we're not worthy, right? And I wonder if that sounds like you. If that sounds like you, I want to give you a couple steps to just put yourself first without guilt. Okay. So the first one is, as women, we feel guilty when we do for ourselves, right? We feel guilty if we go get our nails done, or we feel guilty if we go out for a walk, or we go out for dinner with a friend, or maybe like me, you go for a staycation where you grab a hotel that's near the house. Like, for me, I live in Florida, so I'll grab a hotel at the beach and go spend the night. So maybe you feel guilty that you're doing that because you feel like, oh, I got to leave the kids behind, or the spouse, or they're going to think I'm being selfish because I'm doing for me. So I want to tell you, first of all, there's some things you can do to overcome that. So let's say you are a CEO mom. And so those that are listening to me the first time, when I say CEO mom, I don't like the word stay-at-home mom, because you are a CEO mom, because even if you are at home running the house business, which is why I call you a CEO mom, you have a job to do. And that's making sure the business of the home is running the way it needs to. So let's say you're that CEO mom and you have kids that, you want to spend time with, but you feel like there's not enough time in the day. So let's start with they're little. If they're little kids, under, say, 8 years old, right? Maybe you sit down and watch a silly TV show. When my kids were little, it was Barney, right? Sit down and watch a silly TV show with them and just be engaged with them, because you're going to laugh at the crazy show. You're going to spend time with your little one, but you're also going to be taking some time out for yourself. So that's one of the steps you can do with your children. If your kids are a little older, so when I finally realized that I mattered and I had to do something for me first, my kids were a little older. So my oldest one, he loved to go get his toenails done because he played football and he had football toes. So we would go for mani-pedi together. He'd get the pedi, I'd get the mani-pedi. And it was giving myself time to take care of myself and have self-care. But at the same time, my son Matthew was spending time with me, and we would chit chat and talk about what was happening. We might talk about the football game upcoming or the one that just passed. We might talk about girls, whatever that is, right? Him and I also had a code word for spending time together, and that was, let's go for sushi. So that would tell me that he wanted to have conversations with me, right? So my younger son, Nate, he's not into mani-pedis. He could not be bothered with any of that, but he loves to go to the movies. So we would go and catch a movie together. And we still do that to this day. He'll be like, what new movie's coming out? What do you want to see, Mom? And we'd go catch that movie together. So that's something you can do with your kids. Like, find something that you can enjoy doing that they maybe would like to do with you, and you're spending time with them. Okay. Now, when it comes to your spouse or significant other, it's kind of the same thing. Maybe catch a movie at home. Like my husband and I, even today, we find a lot of stuff on Netflix, and we'll sit down and we'll watch the movie on Netflix, right? Or maybe you coordinate once a month, you're going to go out on a date and take turns picking. He picks this month, you pick next month. Neither one of you can complain about what the other picked, but you've picked something to go do. Okay. So those are some things you can do with your loved ones when it comes time for self-care and not feeling guilty. Right. So then that way, when you do want to go do something for yourself, like a staycation or go to the movies by yourself, that guilt, you can release that guilt because you are finding time to spend with them as well. Okay. So those are just some simple steps you can do when it comes to your family. But let's talk about your job. Okay. Your professional career. So let's say that you're at work and you've got this big project to get done and you're in charge of a team. Okay. So one of the things I used to do is I wanted to make sure that my team all had a responsibility of the project that we were doing. So when I worked for a big corporation, each person had a piece of that pie because you can't run the whole machine together. You've got to have help. So find what works, what their talents are, and give them that piece of the pie that will outshine their talents. Okay. And then make sure that you, along with them, are taking breaks out to collaborate, whether it's, hey, let's go grab some lunch together and collaborate, or maybe you go outside the building and go for a quick walk around the building. I did this at the big corporation I worked with. I would send my team out to go for walk breaks. And my other team leads from other departments are like, how can you do that? Why are you doing that? And I'm like, listen, if you look at my department's goals, we're hitting our goals, which means they're working hard. I need them to be all in, not be tired. So I would also go each day with one different group, and I'd go for a walk with them and just chat with them. How are they doing? What's going on? What's happening in their world? We wouldn't talk about what's happening in the project, just how are they doing? So that's another way that you can, at your professional level, do something for yourself while you're engaging with your team as well. Okay. And if you are an entrepreneur, let's say you own your own business and you're overwhelmed with all these things to get done, I'm going to challenge you to look and see what are some of the things you're doing in your business that you actually might be able to benefit from having a virtual assistant, right? So my business coach, Julie DeLuca Collins, helped me understand what my value is per hour. So once you take that per hour value and you say, filing paperwork is not worth $300 an hour. So maybe you have a virtual assistant that helps you electronically file your stuff. Find somebody that can do those things that takes up time for you building your business. And then also make sure you are taking time out during the day to go for a walk, do meditation, something that helps you pour into yourself while you're pouring into your business. So those are some tips I want to just teach you and share with you that I know I do for my self-care. So I don't feel overwhelmed. So I don't feel like I'm on the shelf, because when you put yourself on the shelf, you can't become that hero of your life. You can't become that self-made hero and have balance in your life with boundaries that you set and how to incorporate them without guilt. So just want to share some of that with you because, you guys are amazing, amazing individuals. You're beautifully and wonderfully made, and you deserve everything that's waiting for you. But when we don't open our eyes to what's around us, we don't allow ourselves time for ourselves, you can't pour into others. You can't pour into your career if you don't pour into yourself first. So I just want to share that with you. And I want to invite you, if any of this resonates with you, I would love to invite you to we have a Shiro League. You can come once every Sunday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. If you want to come and just visit with us, we always have an open house opportunity. You can join us. It's at a Sunday evening, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. You can come in your PJs. It's a great way to end your week and start your new week. You can do that as well. So if you want that information, just go to pearl@wsliving.com. Again, pearl@wsliving.com and email me and I can get you the link to join us. But if you want to look at some more of these steps that I've done, I would love for you to just go download my ultimate guide to self-care, and some additional steps are in there. And that's at pearlsebook.com. That's pearlsebook.com. And I hope you guys know that you come into this world as this beautiful, beautiful oyster. We're a little rough on the outside, but on the inside, you have this amazing pearl. And I just want you to know that you are this amazing pearl, and I hope you find your inner pearl of greatness.